Hi guys, White Warlock here. This is going to be part 2 of me going through every support gem that is in Path of Exile 2. Every support gem has been hovered over by one of the content creators um, that played the game a few weeks before the release in LA, and these are the most recent numbers we have on most of them. So they are still subject to change. Some of them might not be completely the same on release, but the function will be the same, and that's important, right? Just like in part one, I'm gonna talk about each support gem and how they will function, maybe in a build as well. And yeah, they're gonna be quite detailed, more detailed than I was thinking, but I think it's pretty important to yeah, get as much information as possible and maybe in what kind of way you want to use them in your builds. So the first one we have right now is Far Reach. This gives supported skills 80% reduced penalty to accuracy rating at range. So they're going to be more likely to hit at range. But they're for melee attack skills only, so they're not for ranged attacks. I mean, in my opinion, I think if you're playing an attack build and you really need accuracy, you're an accuracy build, right? So you're not playing Resolute Technique, then you just want 100% accuracy at all times, and Far Reach is completely useless. So maybe you could put it on like a secondary skill where there are some kind of accuracy penalties to it, or you have some kind of accuracy rating bonus on your main skill that doesn't apply to your other skills, then maybe you can play this. Otherwise, it might be in just an early game gem when you don't have 100% hit chance, although you should try to get that anyways. So yeah, in my opinion, Far Reach is probably one of the worst or least usable support gems, but we shall see. Then we have faster attack, so this one's quite simple. This just gives your support skills 25% more attack speed. It seems that in Path of Exile 2 versus Path of Exile 1, it's going to be less available attack speed, so you want more um, ways to get attack speed, and you don't have things like Leap Slam anymore, where faster attack is very nice to improve your movement speed. So faster attacks on your main skill may actually be useful. So 25% more attack speed is obviously pretty good, especially if you don't skill attack speed that much, because then it's almost like almost becomes 25% more damage or even more on your skill. So this might definitely be worth it. Then we have a faster casting. This is like the same thing for spells, just cast speed. The same goes for attack speed as cast speed. It's probably going to be harder to get in Path of Exile 2. So yeah, I would definitely recommend that on one of your skills. Then we have faster projectiles. So this grants the supported skills to have 40% more projectile speed. So yeah, it's going to be interesting if you need that. There's going to be some skills where this is bad, other skills where it's good to have projectile speed, but it's probably not going to be on a main skill. I'm not quite sure yet on what skills you would want this. Obviously, it could be that faster projectiles is better on skills that aren't released yet, but for now, um, maybe we could use it, but we don't know yet. Then we got Freeing Fence. This is a minion support gem. This makes minions deal 30% more damage, but also take 20% more damage. Well, I would say that this is probably worth it, especially on the minions that respawn or on minions that are very tanky that can definitely take this 20% more damage. Obviously, now in Path of Exile 2, we have minions that can respawn if you get them with spirits, right? So um, their health is maybe a little bit less important, and then the 30% more damage is very nice. So we're definitely gonna be using this support gem. Then we got Fiery Death, which is a fire support spell. What it does is that it supports any skill that hits enemies, so it can be a spell or an attack, as long as it's not a dot skill, and it causes explosions when you kill, yeah, when the supported skill kills ignited enemies. So this is like for for your clearing skill, maybe after weapon swapping versus bossing, you're probably not using it. Um, and then if you have ways to ignite well, then you put this on your on your clearing skill, ignite your enemies with your secondary skills, and then use the clearing skill with fiery death to explode your enemies and grant more clear. So yeah, that's pretty interesting. Probably gonna get used if the damage is not bad, but otherwise probably pretty good. Then we have fire exposure. So this grants skills that inflict ignite on enemies, like grants them the ability to also inflict fire exposure. So this is for your secondary skills, for your support skills that ignite your enemies, and then because the support skill deals 25% less damage, and that's really bad. Obviously, you don't want that on your main skill. But this is another way to grant minus 10. Like I'm pretty sure exposure is minus 10% resistances. So yeah, that's pretty nice. Remember that in Path of Exile 2, unlike in Path of Exile 1, your enemies, like monsters, their resistance cannot go below 0. So stuff like fire exposure and penetration is a little bit worse than it is in Path of Exile 1, but it's probably still good enough for damage boost. Then we have fire masteries. This gives +1 to level of supported fire skills. That's just good, you know. Yeah, getting more levels. But if it's good enough to put it on your main skill, we don't know yet. It might just be good enough for your secondary skills where you can't put the best support gems on it because you already put them on your main skill, and this just allows some damage boost, but not more than the damage boost you would get from other support gems you already used. And we got fire penetration, quite easy, just penetrates 30% fire res. As I said, fire like penetration is worse in PoE 2 than it is in PoE 1, but it's still needed against bosses, most likely. I'm going to assume that almost every boss has fire resistance or any resistance at all. So yeah, then fire pen is always nice, but we are not sure if it's good enough or applies enough times that you would use it instead of one of your um, other support gems, but it's basically like 30% more damage, right? So as far as we know, resistance is like penetration resistances, if it's not too easy to get, is a pretty good idea. So then we have the next one is for a slam attack. It's Fist of War. So yeah, this one supports slams and it gives a powerful ancestral boost every few seconds. So attacks are ancestral boosted. It's probably the same as the support gem in Path of Exile 1, where you deal a lot of extra damage with the slam. So this is one of those extra um, one of those support gems we've already talked about, which support your main slam skill, trying to kill as trying to deal as much damage as possible with a single attack, and then this could definitely see some use in it if the damage boost is good enough, because we don't know yet what the damage boost is going to be because it doesn't provide or any numbers. Next one we have focused cursed. This says that um, like support curse skills, which allows them to like be applied faster. That's the idea. So curses are not instant like in Path of Exile 1. If you're hard casting curses, then something like this on your curse support seems to be yeah pretty good. So yeah, this is something that you might want to use. Then we have fork support. So this grants like your supported skills to fork, and they deal 50% less damage after forking. So this is probably more of a clear skill again. because it doesn't grant increased damage to your main skill like for a bossing skill, but for clear, forking is pretty good, and that 50% less damage matters less in map clearing. So yeah, that might just be good for like a weapon swap. If we can utilize that enough, obviously. If not, then it might be if you're just playing a build that just focus completely on mapping and not doing the bosses, you can after your axe, you're just doing mapping, you don't need to do the bosses, right? Um, then you can use fork for more clear and faster mapping. So next we have Fortress. So this is one of the ones we actually know how it works. Like we've seen this a lot. People have played with this in early testing from like LA or other gameplay events, and like makes your wall effects like firewall, for example, in a circle. It seems really useful. I think it's definitely going to be used with such effects. So you don't need to like activate it multiple times, especially if you make it you have a cooldown or something, or it has a cooldown on its own. So yeah, Fortress seems pretty nice. Doesn't give extra damage, but it's just a very nice utility support. So probably gonna get used, or at least testing with. Maybe after a while you see that it's not that necessary. So next one is fragility. So this supports any skill that hits enemies, and it causes to become brittle instead of frozen. So the thing that this supports has to be reliable enough to freeze enemies, and then you want to brittle instead. And these enemies are then not affected by freeze and chill. So as far as we know, seeing the gameplay and a little bit of how the tempo is going to be in Path of Exile 2, freezing is really good. So brittle, I'm not sure what brittle does. So brittle has to be really like good enough to replace freezing, because freezing seems really really good, especially against bosses. So unless brittle is insane, I would not recommend using fragility unless you can put this on your, like, let's say you have two secondary skills like that constantly apply freeze, and one of them is enough. You can put fragility on the other to apply both freeze and brittle, but unfortunately that doesn't work, because enemies made brittle this way are unaffected by freeze and chill. So even that doesn't work. So yeah, no, I think freezing is too good, unless brittle itself is really good. Obviously, then you just want to use this. So that kind of depends on what we see when we actually can play the game. Next one is Frost Nexus. So this supports any skill that hits enemies, and it causes it to create patches of chilled ground around these frozen enemies after you freeze them with your supported skill. So that's just after you've frozen them and they're not dead, then they're on chilled ground, so they're chilled, right? They're slowed, so that's a nice defensive layer-ish, and it also grants the ability to um, use effects that apply when the enemies are chilled. So this could be useful. We're not sure yet, but I think it could be useful. Then we got Frost Fire. So whenever you hit a frozen enemy with this port, with the skill that this like this gem supports, you have 100% more effect of the ignite on it, and it consumes the freeze as well to boost the damage, right? So it's just like if you can do both, after you freeze, you hit it with the skill, and then as long if you're an ignite build and you stack the ignite damage, then it makes it deal 100% more damage. So this seems really good. If you can constantly use this, then I would definitely recommend using it, because 100% more effective ignite is a really good, really, really, really good bonus. So yeah, that seems nice to have. Then we have Frozen Vortex. So this supports any skill that hits enemies again. And this creates a chilling vortex on shattering an enemy. So this means, like, here we have when you freeze an enemy, you create chilled ground. And here, when you kill a frozen enemy, you create a vortex which deals 30% of overkill damage. So that means, let's say something has 1 HP and is frozen, which won't happen that often, obviously. But let's say something has 1 HP, you deal 1,000 damage of it, then to it, then 999 damage is the overkill damage. So 30% of that over that 999 damage is what the vortex will deal. So that will be a lot of damage, obviously, but that's not always how it works. But this seems like something, as long as the vortex is big enough and if you can freeze enough, it seems something again that could be pretty good for clearing, or like if you can shatter an enemy and then uh, use it for bossing, right? If bossing has adds ads, or you have way to create enemies, which there might be with like frost crystals, but we're not sure yet if they fully count as enemies for stuff like this. Then we have the glaciation support. So this is pretty simple. It just gives support skills that hit enemies 50, like causing it to create 50% more freeze buildup, so you can freeze much easier with them. So this is like something, if you want to freeze with your main skill, you can put this on that, or if you want to like set up something with your secondary skills, like set up the freeze with your secondary skills, then you can use glaciations to make that quicker, and then use your like primary skill to deal a lot more damage to those frozen targets. So yeah, glaciation is probably pretty nice for that. Heightened curse, perfectly simple. The cost multiplier is 200%, which is pretty high, and like reservation multiplier is 150%, so you have to look out for that. But otherwise, it seems pretty good, like 25% more effective supported curses. So as long as you can handle those costs, then I would probably always run this because you want the curse to be good enough, right? Next, we have herbalism. So this is again one like clarity we've talked about in the first video. This is something where you put it on a different on another buff to grant you another buff, although it does increase the spirit reservation multiplier. And like when your buff is active, then you gain more life flasks. Probably late game, this is probably less useful as long as your build doesn't rely on less life flash, which is very likely. I'm not sure if you can make a build that really needs life flasks to function, but in the early game, perhaps, especially in the early game when you need to fight those long boss fights, if your build isn't insane, or you didn't get insane items in the beginning of the game, then that 40% increased recovery from life flask allows you to use less flask charges during the fight, and so allow you to use more flask charges during the fight. So then it allows you to increase your survivability in those early fights. Next, we have Hex Bloom. So this gives curses that, like the curses that this support gem supports, causes them to spread between enemies when they die. So this is like proliferation for curses. As long as like it's not super easy to apply curses, like in PoE1 with like cast on, let's like cast on crit, for example, or cast on hits, for example, stuff like that. Then Hex Bloom seems pretty good, especially when clearing, when you can kill a monster. That monster applies this the curse to another monster. You kill that one, and then it spreads, right? Then maybe you can use Hex Blast, for example, as one of your skills to abuse the fact that you curse a lot of your enemies in front of you. Next, we have Hinder. So this one says this only works on chaos damage over time. Spells even more so. It says that deal non-ailment chaos damage over time. So that seems that it doesn't work for poison. So it will be only like stuff like Essence Drain, like PoE1 Essence Drain, and so this gives those spells the ability to also hinder your enemy. So hinder is something that reduces their movement speed. Um, Action, so it's almost like slow, right? Um, So this is again for a support skill where hinder is another defensive layer on your skill, on your build, and if you can support that, then this is pretty good. But most of the time, if your build relies around dealing that chaos damage over time, then you might want a more damage boosting skills. But let's say you play a witch, where you have some skills to support your minions, and your minions are the way that deal the most damage, and then you can use like chaos damage over time spells to apply debuffs or improve your defense, for example, then Hinder could be pretty good for that. Next, we have Holy Descent. This is for skills that cause you to leap into the air. There are some skills that do that. We don't know of all of them, obviously, so we're not sure how much you can do that and if you can create builds that do that enough. But for this one, you only need that one skill that does that. And then when you land with that skill, you create consecrated ground. So that causes your enemies, like enemies that are on consecrated ground, to deal more, like take more damage, obviously. So it's good for that. But we're not completely sure yet if this is something like this is worth it. It might not be. It might be if it's an easy way to apply consecrated ground and you get bonuses somewhere else for being on consecrated ground or dealing damage against enemies on consecrated ground, then something like this is very useful. Next, we have Hourglass. So this supports any damage skill. Like you can use itself, so something that doesn't trigger, and then you give the spell a long cooldown, but allow it to deal 50% more damage. So 50% more damage is a lot. You could like put this on like a slam. Let's say your slam build, and you have an additional slam that you won't use that much because it feels a little bit weird, or it has very low attack speed. You can put this on that to deal a lot more damage, but you can only use it like once every 8 seconds, or like once every 9 seconds with the attack speed in it, right? But then it's pretty good still because if it's something like you can get a slam skill, you put hourglass on it, you put all the other support gems that say if the enemy is frozen or its armor is broken, you put that all on then, and then as long as you can apply those conditions every 8 seconds, then you can use that slam to deal a shit ton of damage, and then use your normal spell again. So something like this might be very useful for a lot of builds that have the ability to use multiple spells, and one of the spells be something that deals a lot of damage for the one use, and then it's fine that it can go on cooldown, and then you can use your primary skill for the rest of the fight until you can use the skill support by Hourglass again. Then finally, for support gems that start with H, we have Hypothermia, and this grants supported skills to have 25% more freeze build-up against chilled enemies. So this is only against chilled enemies. We had the other, like this one, support skills cost 50% more freeze build-up. This is only 25% and only against chilled enemies. So that's a little bit interesting. That seems much worse, right? So, but yeah, this is again the same. I mean, you could do both, right? You can do both hypothermia um, and this one and glaciation on the same spell, and then it's just really good against freezing enemies as long as those enemies are also chilled, and then you can use it on like on a supportive or your secondary skill to apply this freeze, and then maybe you can use that freeze with something like hourglass. Next, we go to Ice Bite. So Ice Bite it gives 35% of damage as cold damage for 3 seconds on that skill after freezing an enemy with that skill. So you need to already be able to deal like cold damage or deal some way of damage to freeze an enemy. But after that, you gain Oh my god. Oh no, I'm reading it completely wrong. Okay. Sorry, my bad. So the way it works is you freeze an enemy with this skill, and then you gain 35% of damage from any of your attacks as cold damage. So yeah, this is okay. So this is something to set up like a big slam again, right? Using Ice Bite on that skill to just uh, yeah to just boost all your skills. So that might be interesting as long as you're able to support an attack, like use an attack to freeze something very fast or very quickly, and then boost one of your attacks. Or you can use Ice Bite and other like freezing stuff on your main skill, and then put Hourglass on that like big skill where you use this, you freeze an enemy, then you use your spell with Hourglass. So that could be a good combination because it's just like almost 35% more damage, obviously, or maybe even more after. But I'm pretty sure in Path of Exile 2 conversion happens last, right? So this happens last, not before. So your increased 2 cold damage doesn't matter after this. But we're not completely sure about how damage calculations work in PoE 2. Then we have Ignite Proliferation. This says that ignites caused by the skill that this gem supports spread to other enemies within 1.4 meters. So this is another prolif. Yeah, pretty nice for a clearing skill as long as that 1.4 meters is not too short. But for maps and with high enough monster density, then this is pretty nice to have. But obviously not something you would put on your main skill if you're going bossing. And then we have Ignition. This is like the same as Chill and Freeze. Support gems. This just grants more chance to ignite. This is something you're probably gonna put on the secondary skill which you want to use to ignite to buff your main skill. But we don't know yet. Maybe you want to put it on your main skill because igniting is too important. But if your build is around igniting, you probably want to have the chance without the support gem as high as possible to ignite with that skill. So it might just not be necessary for that one. Okay, then we have Immolate. This ground support, like the support skill that immolates on can't ignite, but you deal 30% damage as fire damage against ignited enemies. So this is extra damage, right? It doesn't convert 30%. It's just you gain 30% extra damage, and that damage is fire damage. So this is again like you put ignition on a secondary skill, you ignite your enemies, then you put immolate on your primary skill. After you've ignited your enemies with your secondary skill, you hit your enemies with with attacks that has immolate on it, so you deal 30% more fire damage, or like not more fire, like not 30% more fire damage, but 30% extra damage as fire. So that's pretty nice. Then we have Impact Shockwave. This supports melee strike skills only, and when you damage a target, when you stun a target, you deal damage around them. Um, Within 1 meter, right? So that's uh, yeah, that's pretty cool. Like a pretty new like pack stealing, like pack killing thing. As long as your build can stun enough. So that's important. You need to stun enough to be able to use Impact Shockwave, but otherwise another clear thing, right? It's interesting to see that there are a lot of early um, conditional support jams that improve your clear. I think that's going to be pretty interesting, and yeah, I'm looking forward to trying them out and see how good they are. We're not completely sure if they're really good or not, but like this with dealing the same damage to the enemy. So if you hit something, you stun them with a big hit, and you deal that enemy to and you deal that same damage to enemies with on 1 meter, which is not that big, not that large of an area, right? But still enough to damage some or even all of the monsters in the same pack, then yeah, it's interesting to see that like support skills like that are interesting to see that they make this early on. It's nice to have. Then we have next one we have Impending Doom. This triggers Doom Blast when curses from supported skills expire. So in this one you want like it's a little bit of extra damage. What you can do is put it on like if you have less duration on the curse, maybe that helps Impending Doom. I'm not completely sure If this also works, if you can like remove the curse, I don't know if that counts as expires, but if that would count, then you put this on the curses, and if you play a build yeah, if you play a build that can do that, then it's an extra damage modifier. So yeah, maybe that's good. Like Doomless is probably gonna be another clear thing, but if removing curses is easy enough to do in boss fights, or it's just some extra damage you can do, especially in the early game because it's a tier 1 support gem. So if you have a curse early, you can put this on the curse and then just put it on bosses, and every couple seconds after your curse expires, you trigger the Doom Blast, deal a little bit of damage, then curse them again, and then the Doom Blast triggers again. So that's nice. It's always a little bit of extra damage, even if you don't use it, as long as you can just put it in the early game, and then after like Act 5 or Act 6, you remove it, and then you do something else. Or you can use it for for your whole game, right? If you can build around it. Then we have increased limit. So this grants a skill that can only be activated a limited number of time, an additional use, right? But it only applies to skills that use the word limit, and I haven't seen one yet, so I have no idea if this is good enough or if this is good. It depends on how good the spells are that have that limit. So I can't say anything about this one. We have increased armor break. Like in the last part, I talked a lot about support gems because they were early on in the list that said when your enemy has no or has their armor broken, you deal a lot more damage, and you need a secondary skill to apply that broken armor. Increase armor break is something to improve that process. So you can do that earlier and then deal like a lot of damage with your slam, like your one-off slam. Something like Hourglass support can like make a synergy with that. It's not something I'm gonna be doing first, but it's definitely something I'm thinking about when reading these support gems. That might be an interesting way to create builds that I like a lot, where you like do a few actions and then after that you slam with one of your big skills and deal like 50% or 100% of an boss's health pool. So that's going to be interesting to see if that is possible, especially with the new ways where you can where you can equip two-handed weapons. That's going to be very interesting indeed. But we're also not completely sure about what unique items exist in the game, which is one of the like things that we haven't seen at all. Like we haven't seen almost any good unique items. We don't know how many good unique items there are, and something like that could really improve a build that uses stuff like increased armor break. Next, we have inevitable crit or inevitable critical, and this supports any skill that you use yourself that hits enemies, and it just grants you critical hit chance every second you are not critting, basically. So every second you're not critting with the skill, it goes up, and then the second it reaches 100%, you crit with the skill, and then you lose all the critical strike gens, and it builds up again. Yeah, so this would be like you could. I'm assuming this just counts up. It doesn't matter you need to use the skill itself, um, but because it says you gain it each second, um, as long as the skill hits, right? So if this is the complete description, then you could use it on the concept again, where you can use it on a big slam skill and grant it 100% crit chance. So you don't need to invest in crit chance. If it works like that, maybe you can use it. If it doesn't work like that, then it's a horrible. Then it's just completely useless, and only like in the early game where it matters for like bossing the DPS, where sometimes you just want to crit, but otherwise late game it's bad. Infernal Legion is another minion support gem. So as I said in the part one, I'm not a minion player. I hate playing minions. So I know a lot less about them, but I'll still try to judge it with my limited knowledge. So this causes them to take fire damage and then deals fire damage. This is like righteous fire on minions. I have no clue if this is any good. It could be good. Maybe it also depends. This one depends heavily on how minions are, how you can support this with your ascendancies. Like we have the fire, like the fire witch ascendancy that has like minion support. That is the minion class, right? So um, maybe Infernal Legion is really good with that. Maybe it's terrible. Yeah, I have no idea. Next one is Innervate. So this supports attacks, and if when you like kill a shocked enemy with this attack, uh, your other attacks, all your attacks, not this one, grant 35% like more damage. So this is a little bit like Ice Bite, where um, this is if you freeze an enemy, this needs you to kill an enemy. So that's a little bit worse because you need to kill an enemy with a secondary attack to like to boost an attack after that. So that's a little bit worse in bossing, right? Where you don't like normally you can't force um, that to happen, right? So it's a little bit worse than Ice Bite would be, but maybe in maps when you can use this, it's still good enough. It also depends on how many attacks you're really using. If you're one attack build, then Innervate's completely useless. If you're like cycle your attacks, then this boosts the other attacks. So if you can fit it, especially if you use multiple attacks, you have attacks that aren't getting supported by the best support gems because you just eventually run out of the best support gems. Then Innervate might be useful for a build like that. So it could be okay. Inspiration. So this has support skills at 40% less cost, and it's at cost, not mana cost. So if you can support gems that reserve spirit, I would assume that inspiration works on that. Um, I would say that this is like something you want to use in auras again, just like you used less mana cost supports before inspiration was a thing. So yeah, this is just very simple. It's not like the new PoE one inspiration where you get stacks. This is just 40% less cost. That's it. Next we have Intense Agony. This supports again support spells that deal non-ailment damage over time, so not poison, not ignite, and it causes them to have a shorter duration, but it deals substantially more damage over time with the debuffs. So against enemies on full life. So this is something where you apply a dot when like when enemies are full life, and that dot has less duration but deals a shit ton more damage on the first tick, right? Um, so, or well, if it's inflicted on the monster when it has full life, um, that's how this reads. It's not like on the first tick, the tick grows, but yeah, so this is something like that where it's good. Again, non-ailment means that it's not going to be good for poison because it doesn't count for poison because poison is an ailment, right? So yeah, that kind of sucks. But for chaos damage, like skills like Essence Rain in PoE 1, then this could be pretty good. If you just apply it once, it just increases your damage in mapping. Obviously, in bossing, it applies once, and that's not the beginning, and after that, it doesn't apply anymore, so that's a little bit worse. Then we got Iron Grip, so this is like I think Iron Grip is also a support gem in PoE 1, and it's something on the tree on PoE 1 where it causes strength to increase projectile damage and not only melee or only attack damage. Yeah, we don't know how much strength you can actually have and if this increased damage is enough to justify running a support gem like this. So can be good, can be bad. But that's like almost all the support gems. Obviously, some support gems just seem really good in general or for secondary skills, this is a support gem where it's either not used at all or used almost all the time for projectile damage builds that have enough strength that makes it worth it. Then we got Jagged Ground. So I have no clue what Jagged Ground does. So this seems like it just supports like slam skills that increase, like make potential Jagged Ground. Um, but I'm gonna like if you're theory crafting it, this is something you're not putting on your main skill, but something again you're putting on a secondary skill, on a secondary slam. You use that slam to apply the Jagged Ground, and then you go ahead. Like the jagged ground lasts for 6 seconds, right? So you just use the jagged ground once with your like secondary or like third or fourth slam skill if you have enough space for that, and then you just continue dealing damage with your main skill. So yeah, maybe if there's room for it in one of your attack skills, then why not, right? But otherwise, yeah, I have no idea what jagged ground does, so I can't judge it enough. Knockback, so this just makes things. There's any skill that hits enemies causing it to knock back enemies. So it's not chance to knock back, right like it is in PoE 1. This just knocks back enemies at all. I hate this. Like I hate like when I play melee skills, I don't want to knock back my enemies. But like for ranged like range skills, because it's also that hit spells, maybe knocking back is a little bit better because you don't want your enemies to be close to you, right? So I guess that's nice, but yeah, it's probably more like a meme thing. But maybe you can use it with uniques or things on the passive tree that boost some way knocking back enemies. Right, next we have Last Gasp, which is a minion support again, and this makes it so that minions that would die are instead still active for 4 seconds, and then they die. So this pretty interesting for like some raging spirits where they would die or expire after a few seconds. Now they die 4 seconds later, and if it's on something like summon raging spirits in PoE 1 which die relatively quickly, that 4 seconds is actually a lot of like 4 seconds is not that low amount on like minions that would die quickly anyway. So maybe that's good. Maybe that's good on them, but otherwise, especially the minions that you have that reserve spirit are just respawned, right? Just respawned anyways, so you don't need this last gap. It becomes a little bit worse for that. But it does give you the opportunity to have more time to resummon minions on minions that don't respawn immediately. So for that, Last Gasp could be useful. Again, I'm not a minion player, so I won't test this. I I won't have any clue if it's good enough, but there are other content creators that do love their minions, so you can check them out, like Gazi, for example. All right. Next we have Lasting Shock. So supported skills have that shock have 100% increased shock duration on enemies, but they have less chance to shock. So as long as the gem that this supports has enough chance to shock, that 25% less chance to shock doesn't matter, or it like let's say it applies enough hits that it's fine, then it's good enough. However, if it's on skills that apply shocks constantly, then that 100% increased duration doesn't matter. So yeah, that's kind of important. That's kind of unfortunate on support gems like this. It's the same for like chill and ignite, where if you constantly apply ignites anyway, then the less chance is bad and the increased shock duration doesn't matter. So that's a little bit unfortunate. But if you use skills that apply shocks pretty comfortably, but don't apply them often, then lasting shock is pretty nice to have on those. But for now, I don't see that use yet. But we'll see if that skill exists and you actively use it in your build, then lasting shock is something you want to have, and otherwise you don't. Next one is less duration. So this just grants the skills less duration. This is on something if you want to support impending doom, then less duration could be nice. Otherwise, there's some skills that where less duration is really bad, and there are other skills where less duration is good. So yeah, we don't know yet, but obviously there will be some use of less duration, or there will be like some unintended unintended thing that GGG forgot that less duration on something like that is pretty bad, and then it will get nerfed again. We don't know yet. Life drain is another one. This is another life recovery thing. So this, whenever you call an enemy with that skill, you recover 12% of your life over 4 seconds. So it's an additional life recovery way in early acts, I would say. You could definitely use it as long as you have a consistent way to kill. Otherwise, something like this is, in my opinion, really bad unless your build has nothing else to regain life, and you kill enough that life drain could be used, but I doubt it. Then we have Life Leech. So this is only for physical damage attacks, but as long as you deal physical damage attacks, you can leech 3% of that damage as life. Yeah, this could be good if Life Leech is not that good, like not that easy to get. Something like this is the easy way to get it, right? As long as your attack deals physical damage. You could use it on melee, you can use it on like crossbows as long as those attacks are the physical damage ones. Yeah, Leech is something that's harder to come by than it would be in PoE 1, but it's probably also less strong than it is in PoE 1. So we don't know yet. But if you need a way to find Leech, then this is a way to do it. Then we got Life Tap, so this is blood magic, but for a single skill, so it grants, instead of the mana cost, it uh, costs life to cast. Now, in PoE 1, we used stuff like this on skills to be able to reserve like 100 or 99% of our mana. In PoE 2, those reserve things are not preserving our mana, but preserving spirit, which is a new resource. So life temp is a lot worse in that regard. So maybe like for the blood mage, stuff like that, where costing like spending mana, spending life is a good thing for like those builds. Life temp might be important. Otherwise, it's a lot less important than it will be in PoE 1. That's my prediction, anyways. Then we got a lightning exposure. So this is one of those the other ones we've already discussed. It just inflicts lightning exposure on shocking an enemy, but the skill that this supports deals less damage. So this is again on the secondary skill, on a support skill, which can shock enemies reliably, then give them less lightning resistance, and causing your main skill to deal more damage to that enemy. So yeah, that's something you are probably gonna like. If you're a lightning build, you're gonna most likely be using lightning exposure on one of your support skills. Then we got Lightning Mastery. This gives +1 level to support lightning skills. This can be used on your main skill if +1 level is good enough. We don't know yet how that scaling works. Otherwise, it's probably good somewhere. If you've already used all your support gems elsewhere, you can just throw this on one of your lightning skills if you have the room. And then we got Lightning Pen. So lightning penetration, this just penetrates 30% lightning resistance. Again, as I've said multiple times, like penetrating resistances is different in PoE 2 than it is in PoE 1. PoE 1, you can make enemies go below 0% resistances. In PoE 2, you can't. So like penetrating resistances is a little bit worse, but if there's less ability to do so, then penetration becomes more important. So this kind of depends on what your build can do and how easy it is to penetrate resistances, and how because we don't know yet how much resistances bosses or higher level enemies do have. So if higher level enemies have base lightning resistance on their own, and this is basically one of the only ways to use penetration, then lightning penetration allows you to your main skill to deal a lot more damage. Otherwise, it doesn't. So this one depends a lot on how the game is gonna look like. And then lastly for this part, we're gonna discuss lockdown. This supports any skill that hits your enemies, and it causes pin buildup. Unfortunately, we don't know what pinning is, but I think one or multiple content creators have guessed that it's something like rooting something. I don't know if you play League of Legends, but rooting somebody allows like makes them not be able to move but still act. Like they can still attack but they cannot move, and that's probably something where something like that. Pin will probably be something like that, assuming pin like is something that translates to English, right? Like that's kind of what pinning someone does. So, but yeah, we don't know how easy it is to pin something. Maybe you want, and if there's not that many um, things you can do, like if there's not that many things you can benefit from with pinning, then pinning is less useful, so lockdown is not useful. Otherwise maybe lockdown is good, but lockdown is probably again something you put on a secondary skill that you can use a little bit to cause it to pin, and then improve your other skills afterwards, like attacking things that are already pinned, if you have ways to grant your main skill more damage against pinned enemies. Alright, hope you enjoyed this video. Next video, I will continue starting from MAME, and we'll see how many more parts we can do. I want to keep all of these episodes below 1 hour so it's easier to watch and you can go through them. After I've uploaded every video, I'm gonna put some effort into making enough like chapters so you can go through them all easily if you want to. If you have any other suggestions for videos before PoE 2 launches, please let me know. And if you like this video, please like the video and subscribe. And I'll see you guys later. Thank you guys for watching. See you next time.